My name is Brownie, and for those who don't know me, the one thing you should know is this. I watch a lot of movies, and they've given so much back to me. But as much as I love them, and I do try my best to love even the bad ones, there are a handful of movies, just a few, that occupy a very special place in my heart. You see, it's when we experience something, especially when we're young, that cuts so deep and gets so close to the bone. It rattles us, it shapes us, and it stays with us all our lives. Now, I'm a product of the 80s. I'm old and jaded now. I thought I was done with all that. I thought there was no way another movie was going to come along and affect me like when I was young, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. Not a chance. 60 seconds into 5:25:77, and I knew that I was wrong. 60 seconds in, and I was a child again. When I was only a little cub, my favourite movie was Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. A hopeful young hero in a fantastic world of impossible dreams and everlasting gobstoppers. Recorded from TV on an old top-loading VCR in the late 70s, I used to run to the TV to put on that movie and watch with awe as Gene Wilder introduced me to a world of pure imagination. The next time I felt that same sense of awe and wonder, I was 7, and like any 7-year-old, I was proper obsessed with dinosaurs. I used to pore through books at the library looking for paleontologists' colour renderings of what these majestic and terrifying creatures might have looked like. As exciting as it was, they were only pictures, just illustrations. It's not like anyone could ever bring them back to life. I must have been a little older, around 10, when I started paying attention to the credits of all these movies. Probably because the same names kept cropping up. But who were they? What did all these people do? Seeing Steven Spielberg printed on a VHS cover was so common. I thought Spielberg was just another word for movie. But why were movies with his name more interesting? Or movies with George Lucas' name on them more engaging? Eventually, the more films you see, the more aware you become of how the sausage is made, as Kevin Smith likes to say. You can forget how to become lost in the moment like you did when you were a kid, just running around with your parents' camera and making your own movies in your backyard. So imagine if you were that kid with a camera. Not today, but decades ago. A time when the movies that inspired you weren't Jurassic Park or E.T., but Planet of the Apes or 2001: A Space Odyssey. Poised, unknowingly at the fulcrum point of a new era for filmmaking. Armed only with your Super 8 camera, an editing machine, and a touch of destiny. 5:25:77 tells a story of Patrick Reed Johnson, a real person from a real town called Wadsworth, Illinois. Growing up, Pat was obsessed with movies. He watched them, he made them, he read about them in Starlog, an American cinematographer magazine. He felt so strongly that film was his future. He lived it, he breathed it. But like so many with big dreams, he was faced with a problem. How to get there from here? Is the real hurdle the physical distance of Hollywood, or having to confront the real reasons you're afraid to take the first step? Patrick, played with genuine empathy, angst and charm by John Francis Daley, is in luck. A lot of luck, actually. An incredibly mind-melting amount of luck. He just doesn't know it yet. Thanks to a well-timed phone call from Patrick's mother, played again with genuine sympathy by Colin Camp, Patrick scores an introduction with Herb Lightman, editor of American Cinematographer magazine. Now, I don't want to spoil everything for you that happens on Pat's journey, but suffice it to say that if you take a trip out to Hollywood and one of the first things that happens to you is that Steven Spielberg offers you a Pepsi, and that's still not the best thing that happens to you on your trip, you must have had a pretty interesting time. But what is there to see out there anyway? A few cool spaceship models or greasy-haired college kids in a warehouse in Van Nuys? Not the sort of thing that can change your life, right? It's worth pointing out, at this point, that this movie is actually telling a true story. Patrick Johnson, the writer-director of 52577, is telling his autobiographical tale of real events that happened in his formative years. A lot of so-called based on a true story movies are perfectly willing to sacrifice historical accuracy for the sake of an entertaining but fictional story. Similarly, a lot of fictional movies like to pepper in real-world science and details to make their stories seem more true. And there's nothing wrong with either of those methods of storytelling. But 52577 is neither of those. It lives at a sort of a beautiful nexus point where the best story is the true story. And the man who lived it is here to tell it to you. Not with rose-coloured nostalgia glasses, although to anyone who lived through the 70s, this movie will no doubt serve as a refreshingly accurate blast from the past. But this story is told with the sober 2020 vision of hindsight, which allows not just the events themselves to be laid bare, but the emotional connective tissue which explains them to be maturely demonstrated and put on display. It's a love letter to film, and it's a siren song to filmmakers everywhere. I mean, this film had a long production, lots of stops and starts that come along with independent films. I mean, I've been there myself, I know what it's like. I mean, I first heard of this movie probably 17 years ago, and I've only now been able to see it. And I think it speaks very well of the filmmakers, that it doesn't feel troubled, it doesn't feel strained, it doesn't feel like it's been through the Hollywood ringer looking for distributors and funding. It feels real, and I think that's the highest praise I can possibly give it. It feels like real life. And as we all learn watching the film, life does not move at 24 frames a second. It moves a lot faster. I absolutely loved this movie. It might just be my new favourite movie, and I know people say that a lot. You ask them what their favourite movie is and they say a movie that came out 2 weeks ago, but sometimes the movie that comes out 2 weeks ago is destined to be a classic, and I just hope more people get to see this film because it's such a little piece of celluloid magic. I really don't want anyone to miss out on it because it really is just that wonderful. I suppose overall, at the end of the day, this movie leaves you with one question lingering in your mind, and it's a question that resonates not just with film fans or Star Wars fans. It's a question that resonates with anyone who's ever wanted to get anything done, anyone who's reached a bit higher than they were supposed to reach. And that question's gonna stay with me for some time, I think. At the end of the day, how are you gonna get there from here?